The flying head, also known as Big Head or Dakanonian, is a cannibalistic monster, belonging to the mythologies of the Iroquois and Wyandot peoples of North America, appearing as an antagonist in numerous stories and legends. According to native folklore, during an especially severe winter prior to European arrival, an unknown tribe in New York State was suffering a famine. The young men wished to move the tribe across a great lake to seek new opportunities, whilst the older men, believing the famine was a punishment or their crimes by the spirits, desired to stay and endure. Enraged by the old men's stubbornness, the young men killed them, decapitating the bodies and dropping their heads into the lake. However, one of the young men involved in the massacre became entangled in the pile of heads, falling into the lake and drowning. From the lake arose a giant head, taller than a man, coated in thick black hair, possessing wings and talons, and which would perpetually hunt and haunt the tribe. After destroying those responsible for the murders, the flying head began terrorizing other tribes, during which time the Iroquois faced the demon. After being plagued for many years by the monster, including a famous folktale in which a young Ongwahan hunter's dogs sacrificed themselves to save their master from the beast, a woman roasting acorns was visited by the creature. Believing she was eating live coals, the flying head grew terrified at the strength of the Iroquois people and fled to never return. The hill where the unknown tribe's village was located is widely considered cursed by native peoples. 3 hotels have been built on the sacred site in modern times, and each one suffered a short and unsuccessful lifespan before mysteriously burning the ground, naturally reinforcing this superstition. The big owl, also known as Thelechuza, is a mythological race of cannibalistic owl women according to the folklore of the Yakama people, the inhabitants of modern-day Washington state. The Thelechuza live in caves and hunt the people of nearby tribes, preferring the taste of children. Considered among the most dangerous human predators, they were believed to be the progenitors of the entire owl species, themselves a spiritual symbol of death throughout Native American communities. It is believed after a Thelechuza drowned, her eye was used to spawn all other lesser owls. Having spread in legend to southern Texas and Mexico, recent years have seen reports of an owl-like monster, called Thelechuza, in relation to unexplained deaths and sinister occurrences in the region. The Thelechuza is reflected in the folklore of numerous other native tribes, including the Seminole Stikini and Wabanaki Sipiluk. The Stikini are believed to be evil witches with the power to transform themselves into owl-like creatures. During daytime they walk among the Seminole people still, but at night they vomit their souls, and become undead owl monsters that feast upon human hearts. Among some communities it is feared, even speaking the name risks turning yourself into one, whilst others use the Stikini as a children's bogeyman. Similarly, the Sipiluk is a dangerous bird spirit, possessing a spectral cry and taking the form of a large owl with only its head and talons visible to the human eye. As with some Seminole communities, the Sipiluk has typically been used by the Wabanaki in children's folktales. The Flathead Lake Monster, originating from Kootenai traditions, is a creature that supposedly dwells in Flathead Lake, Montana. The creature is typically described as an enormous eel-shaped animal with a body akin to that of a snake, measuring between 20 to 40 feet in length, blue-black skin, and gray-black eyes. According to the tribe's legend, the first inhabitants of the region lived on an island in the middle of Flathead Lake. On one winter day, whilst crossing the frozen lake, 2 girls saw antlers sticking through the ice and, believing they belonged to a drowned animal, decided to cut them off. After cutting into the 2-foot-long antlers, the ice split open to reveal the monster, the awakening of whom caused the drowning of half the residents of the lake. This explanation is often provided in folklore for the small number of Kootenai people. Similar to the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, modern reports of the Flathead Lake Monster are abundant in the local area, including a claim in 1889 by Captain James Kerr, 13 such reports in 1993, and an alleged rescue of a 3-year-old drowning boy by the monster. The creature was taken sufficiently seriously that in the 1950s a significant reward was offered for the capture of the superfish, but despite numerous efforts, no firm evidence of existence has ever been recovered. The Tehun, deriving from the Arapaho word for strong, are a race of cannibalistic dwarves with allegedly superhuman strength. Although descriptions vary, the Tehuen are generally depicted as the size of children, with dark skin, and said to have an extremely aggressive and unsociable disposition. According to some legends, they possess the ability to become invisible, whilst others contended they merely seemed so due to the incredible speed with which they caught their adult prey. Within native folklore, it is widely agreed that the Tehuen were destroyed in an ancient conflict, in which the Arapahoes and other Native American tribes allied to successfully defeat them. A unique aspect of their characters, it is suggested in some tales that the Tehuen had the ability to remove their hearts and store them for safekeeping, in so doing protecting themselves from physical harm to their persons. One such prominent story within native folklore tells of a warrior captured by a family of Tehuen, and who to delay his death asks his dim-witted captors about the macabre organs adorning their residence. Upon learning their true nature, the warrior stabs each of the hearts, killing each member of the Tehuen family and winning his freedom. The Ogapoga, also known as Nataka, translated as water demon, is a lake monster who, according to Canadian folklore, lives in Okanagan Lake, British Columbia. Most commonly described as measuring between 40 to 50 feet in length, the sea serpent resembles the extinct Mosasaurus, a carnivorous aquatic lizard from the Cretaceous period. As with the Flathead lake monster, numerous sightings of the Ogapoga have been claimed in recent decades, including at Okanagan Mission Beach in 1946 and on film in 1968, although subsequent video analysis proved the creature to have been a mere waterfowl or beaver. According to the legends of the First Nations, the Ogapoga would demand a toll from travelers in exchange for safe passage near its home of Rattlesnake Island in Lake Okanagan, using his tail to create a mighty storm for those who refused and leaving the shoreline strewn with the remains of those who sought to cheat him. The toll required by Ogapoga was that of life, and so when natives ventured into the lake, they often brought small animals, such as chickens, to drown in the lake and appease the monster. In local legend, Timbasket, a visiting chief from a neighboring tribe, declared his disbelief in the existence of Ogapoga. Scorning the sacrifices of his guests to the demon, as he returned across Lake Okanagan, Timbasket refused and his canoe was sucked under, killing himself and his entire family. Local history also tell of non-Indians who ignored warnings, notably a settler in 1854 called John McDougall. Whilst crossing with a team of horses, McDougall's canoe began to be dragged below the water. Remembering the advice of natives, McDougall cut the ropes holding the horses on board. The horses were pulled under and drowned, but McDougall survived. The Ogapoga, also known as Nataka, translated as water demon, is a lake monster who, according to Canadian folklore, lives in Okanagan Lake, British Columbia. Most commonly described as measuring between 40 to 50 feet in length, the sea serpent resembles the extinct Mosasaurus, a carnivorous aquatic lizard from the Cretaceous period. As with the Flathead lake monster, numerous sightings of the Ogapoga have been claimed in recent decades, including at Okanagan Mission Beach in 1946 and on film in 1968, although subsequent video analysis proved the creature to have been a mere waterfowl or beaver. According to the legends of the First Nations, the Ogapoga would demand a toll from travelers in exchange for safe passage near its home of Rattlesnake Island in Lake Okanagan, using his tail to create a mighty storm for those who refused and leaving the shoreline strewn with the remains of those who sought to cheat him. The toll required by Ogapoga was that of life, and so when natives ventured into the lake, they often brought small animals, such as chickens, to drown in the lake and appease the monster. In local legend, Timbasket, a visiting chief from a neighboring tribe, declared his disbelief in the existence of Ogapoga. Scorning the sacrifices of his guests to the demon, as he returned across Lake Okanagan, Timbasket refused and his canoe was sucked under, killing himself and his entire family. Local history also tell of non-Indians who ignored warnings, notably a settler in 1854 called John McDougall. Whilst crossing with a team of horses, McDougall's canoe began to be dragged below the water. Remembering the advice of natives, McDougall cut the ropes holding the horses on board. The horses were pulled under and drowned, but McDougall survived. The Kachichushku, also known as the stiff-legged bear, was an enormous man-eating monster with a large head that allegedly preyed on native people throughout eastern North America. Approximately elephant-sized, with the Penobscot Indians of modern day, main detailing the creature's inability to sleep lying down due to giant inflexible legs. It is widely assumed that the monster originated from early mastodon remains discovered by natives and incorporated into existing oral histories and mythologies. The Kachichushku serves as a general figure of wider native folklore, with several other tribal cultures retaining belief in a similar monster. The Iroquois people feared the naked bear, great man-eating creatures with the form of a bear, but no fur and an oversized head. The beast was near invincible to ordinary human attacks, and could only be wounded in the soles of their feet. Likewise the Lenape, Shawnee, and Algonquian tribes told legends of the Yakwaviak gigantic, stiff-legged, hairless bears comparable to mammoths or mastodons, whilst among the tales of the Alabama and Cosaudi peoples existed a huge carnivorous predator known as Atipa ticoba, described as bear-like in appearance. The Piazza Bird was a Native American dragon, similar to a manticore or chimera in Persian and Greek mythology, depicted by an ancient mural on the cliff sides of the Mississippi River. Painted between 900 and 1200 CE, although not surviving today, with explorers of the late 17th century recording the increasingly damaged state of the mural due to a native habit of firing weapons at the image. A 1673 description of the so-called Piazza Bird by Father Jacques Marquette detailed a creature as large as a calf, with horns on their heads like those of a deer, red eyes, a beard like a tiger's, a face somewhat like a man's, a body covered with scales, and so long a tail that it winds all around the body, ending in a fish's tail. According to native legend, the Piazza Bird lived in the nearby cliffs and developed a taste for human flesh after feeding on the corpses of deceased warriors. A brave local chieftain, Ogapoga, and his warriors were able to lure the creature from its nest and slay the beast with poisoned arrows. According to historian John Russell in 1836, the mural, the largest Native American painting ever discovered in North America, was painted in specific commemoration of this event. A skinwalker, also known as Yinaldlushi, is a witch who, according to Navajo folklore, has, among other powers, the ability to turn into, and disguise themselves as an animal. The animals most commonly associated with skinwalkers are those culturally identified as tricksters, notably the coyote, but can also include those reflective of death and darkness, such as wolves or owls. According to Navajo legend, to become a skinwalker requires the willful murder of a close relative, and as such they are both feared and reviled within native mythology. Representing the antithesis of the supposed cultural ideals of the Navajo and their medicine men, that of healing and helpfulness, skinwalkers choose to instead manipulate spiritual magic to do evil deeds in a perversion against nature. In addition to their powers of physical transformation, skinwalkers can also possess the bodies of animals and people by locking eyes with them. Due to their presumed power, skinwalkers are prevalent beings in Navajo folktales. These stories typically take the form of climatic struggles between great persons of the tribe and the witch, although atypically for native folklore, not always with an exclusively positive outcome, and often including a didactic message for children to learn from. Many victory stories involving skinwalkers conclude with multiple inhabitants of Ahogum, the traditional Navajo, dwelling joining together in a communal strength of wills to scare away the monster and the darkness it brings with it. As an innately spiritualistic culture throughout Native American society, there are numerous yet comparable accounts of a wide variety of evil supernatural spirits who prey upon tribes. Bakwas, also known as the Wild Man of the Woods, is one such spirit belonging to the Kwakwaka'wakw people of modern-day British Columbia, similar to the Hydasgagat, the Nuucha-Nuultspukubs, and the Tsimshian Bawawis. Bakwas offers ghost food out of cockle shells to humans stranded in a wood where drowned souls congregate. If they accept and eat the offered food, then they too become a ghostly being like Bakwas. Equally, Kushtaka or land otter men are shape-shifting monsters belonging to the folklore of the Tlingit and Tsimshian people of the Pacific Northwest, similar to the Nataina of the Danaina and the Urauli of the Yupaic. Capable of assuming human form, as well as that of otters among other shapes, Kushtaka enjoy tricking sailors to their watery demisses. Typically described in legend as imitating the screams of women and children, the Kushtaka ensnares the victim, ideally children, and either brutally kills them or converts them into another Kushtaka. A minority of native narratives place the Kushtaka in a more pleasant light, depicting them as saving those dying at sea by turning them into a fellow Kushtaka. It is believed among tribes people that Kushtaka can be warded away through copper, dogs, fire, or in some instances urine. Due to this setting and the creature's preferred prey, it is widely theorized the origin of the Kushtaka legend was to encourage young children from wandering too close to the ocean. According to the Zuni people of southwestern United States, Addis is a cannibalistic giant demon. Depicted as several times larger than a human, with his torso described as being as big as a large elk, Addis possesses long gray hair, as prickly as porcupine quills, skin so thick the knuckles appear horned, muscular arms covered in black and white scales, and a swollen red face in which his bulging eyes never blink. A minority of stories also claim Addis has long yellow tusks and long talons. An unsavory figure in native mythology, Addis is regarded as an incorrigible liar, in addition to being a cannibal of both humans and his fellow demons. Habitually armed, Addis is routinely depicted with a giant flint axe or a flint knife as broad as a man's thigh and twice as long. Appearing throughout numerous Zuni legends of similar composition, in Addis the cannibal demon, the monster deceives two young maidens and lures them back to his lair. After failing to persuade them to eat a soup made from human children or to comb his hair, the women are rescued by the Zuni war gods who slay the demon. In another story, the rabbit huntress and her adventures, a young woman lost in a blizzard seeks refuge in a cave. Discovered by Addis, he attempts to break into the cave, but again the war gods rescue the maiden and defeat the monster. The horned serpent, known as Uktena to the Cherokee people, is a mythological monster that recurs throughout several Native American oral histories, especially in the Great Lakes and southeastern woodlands regions. Described as being as large as a tree trunk and covered in magical scales, with horns and a gemstone on its forehead, the horned serpent could not be harmed except in a single spot on its head. Whilst its breath was poisonous, to slay the monster would win the warrior a crystal of immense power, granting a life of successful hunting, rainmaking, and romance. According to Cherokee legend, a great warrior named Oganunitsi achieved this feat, wherein he discovered the crystal required a sacrifice of blood each week. Without this tribute, the crystal searches for blood itself, becoming a ball of fire, and murdering those it encounters. Other variants of the horned serpent includes the tie snake Istakwin, in Muskogee Creek traditions. Slightly smaller than the horned serpent and likewise covered with crystalline scales with a large gem in its forehead, the snake was considered capable of prophecy and its horns were believed to carry medicinal powers. Unlike the Uktena, the tie snake was not considered to be evil or willfully harmful to humans. Equally, the Alabama people told stories of a crawfish snake, or Tisinto Sactco, of a similar design and purpose. In contrast, traditional Sioux belief claimed these serpents were dangerous water monsters of the ancient world, but had been destroyed by the Thunderbirds, supernatural beings of great power, and only their lesser ancestors, such as lizards and snakes, had survived. It is theorized this mythological belief stemmed from the discovery of dinosaur fossils by the Sioux, and the Thunderbirds of pterosaur skeletons. The Nimeriga, or people eaters, are a race of dwarves belonging to Crow and Shoshone legend, said to reside in the Wind River and Pedro mountain ranges of modern-day Wyoming. Described as aggressive by nature, they shoot poisoned arrows and kill their own kind should they fall ill with a blow to the head. During his famed expedition, Meriwether Lewis claimed to have seen evidence of the devils, describing them as roughly 18 inches tall and highly ferocious. Although originally believed to have been entirely mythical, the 1932 discovery of the San Pedro Mountains mummy, a 14-inch tall mummy, has brought this into question, with tests demonstrating the individual was approximately 65 years old at time of death and violently killed by an inflicted head wound. Since 1932, several other similar bodies have been recovered across North America, lending credence to a 1778 account suggesting the existence of a pygmy burial ground and of the possible historical existence of people akin to the Nimeriga. Not isolated solely to the Nimeriga, Crow folklore also includes the Nirambi, a race of goblin-like creatures. Estimated to be between 1 and 2 feet in height, with sharp teeth and little neck, the Nirambi are considered enemies by the native peoples. Depicted as often engaging in harmless mischief, the Nirambi are also considered responsible for evil acts, such as child abduction, and the killing of livestock. Similarly, the Pukwudgies or person of the wilderness of Algonquian folklore are a knee-high race of little people. Considered by some tribes, including the Ojibwe, to be harmless spirits of the forest, other tribes such as the Abenaki believe the Pukwudgies to be dangerous foes with a predisposition towards the theft of children and possessing powers similar to those of the magical Skinwalkers. The Wendigo or Wendigo is a supernatural cannibalistic monster, believed by several Algonquin tribes including the Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Cree, Naskapi, and Innu to reside in the forests of the Atlantic coast and Great Lakes regions of North America. Appearing with some human characteristics or according to a minority of interpretations an evil spirit possessing a human into monstrosity, a Wendigo is typically created through human cannibalism or by an individual overcome with avarice and greed. Described as extremely gaunt and emaciated, with grayish skin, sunken eyes, tattered lips, and possessing a deathly odor, the Wendigo greedily feeds on human flesh. However, for each person, it consumes the monster grows ever larger, so that it is always hungry and hunting. As such, the legend is generally associated with stories of insatiable gluttony and gratuitous murder. It is increasingly considered by anthropologists that the Wendigo existed as much as a metaphor as a literal monster within native mythology, with the concept described as an early depiction of social cannibalism, and applicable to any individual or idea, which expresses a relentless drive towards unnecessary consumption and greed. In so doing, the story didactically encourages cooperation and moderation and discourages the taboo activity of cannibalism during harsh winters. Threatening the stability of a tribe's existence and exhibiting a destructive nature, the allegory, coinciding with the ongoing eradication of native populations and the emergence of an early consumer capitalistic society in North America, is evident and telling, with the violent and unnatural Wendigo, symbolically representing the exclusion and forced assimilation experienced by disregarded natives, via encroaching and expanding American colonialism in pursuit of manifest destiny. Existing among the Sioux, Plains, and Omaha tribes, TwoFace, also known as Sharp Elbows, is a two-faced monster who enjoys preying upon natives' populations, torturing and gruesomely disfiguring his victims before murdering them. As typically depicted in folklore, all who gaze upon either of the twin visages of TwoFace become paralyzed by fear, or in some cases die instantly, and he utilizes his extremely sharp elbows to stab his frozen victims to death. As with several Native American monsters, TwoFace is widely considered to retain a preference for children and female victims, especially pregnant women. According to Lakota mythology, TwoFace was once a woman who was turned into the creature, as punishment for attempting to seduce the sun god, with one beautiful face, and one hideous. An alternative origin story includes a similar background, albeit with TwoFace being born from such an adulterous woman. This duality, as with several native stories seeking to impart a didactic lesson, is widely regarded as representing a disconnection from and disharmony with nature, as an allegorical advocation of traditional conformity within the tribe. Ndamkino, also known as the Perverted Merman, is a creature which recurrently appears in Algonquin mythology, specifically that of the Abenaki people. Described as half man and half fish, with a childlike human face, Ndamkino lives in streams and lakes where women regularly wash themselves. Unlike other native monsters, Ndamkino does not seek to harm these women or to scare them, merely to voyeuristically watch them. Some traditional stories do include attempted molestation, but for the most part the Perverted Merman is just that, a pervert. Mermaid-like creatures are a staple within Native American mythology, with several Algonquin tales including characters who disobey their parents being turned into similar creatures. Consistent throughout these depictions in Native legend, the theft of a merman's or mermaid's clothing strips the being of their magical powers, and renders them unable to swim. A Wetchuge, similar but not identical to a Wendigo, is a cannibalistic monster, stemming from the stories of the Athabascan people of northwestern Canada. According to legend, the Wetchuge is a person who has become possessed or overpowered by the spirit of a great animal, in so doing devolving into a giant bestial form. Some versions of the Wetchuge depict the creature as being physically made from ancient ice come to life to hunt humans, invulnerable to harm and only defeated when melted over a campfire. This rendition of the Wetchuge is notably similar to that of the Wabanakis Chenu, an ice giant who was cursed by the gods for his crimes, his heart turned to ice and his spirit trapped inside a troll-like monster that feasts upon humans. Described as giant animals, both intelligent and physically powerful, the Wetchuge hunts humans and attempts to ensnare and devour its prey through cunning deception. As with the Wendigo, certain tribes adhere to a less spiritual origin of the creature, but instead a product of human indulgence in taboos resulting in the physical corruption of the depraved individual. The Danezawa of the Peace River region in western Canada, for instance, contend a Wetchuge is the product of breaking a strong cultural taboo, such as having a photograph taken with flash, listening to guitar music, or eating meat with fly eggs in it. The Mishabizu, also known as the underwater panther or Great Lynx, is a legendary creature belonging to the mythologies of native inhabitants of the Great Lakes region of North America. A monster from the underworld, the panther resides in creeks and rivers, hiding in wait to drown unsuspecting prey. Described by the Sioux as possessing a body shaped like a buffalo, albeit with paws allowing for rapid swimming, the Mishabizu has just one eye, horns, either a single horn in the center of its forehead, or a pair dorsal fins, a spiked tail, and is covered in scales. Because of the latter characteristics, it has been speculated that the Mishabizu is in fact derived from a prehistoric stegosaurus. Feared by the Ojibwa as the cause of waves, whirlpools, and rapids, it was considered within tribal folklore that each lake might be inhabited by its own Mishabizu who controlled its conditions. Despite being mortal enemies of the thunderbirds, some native communities revered the creatures as symbols of great power and hunting prowess, whilst at least one tribe fearlessly employed Mishabizu as part of a children's game similar to tag. According to an ancient Chippewa tale, the Mishabizu lived on an island of mud situated between two lakeside villages. Avoided by locals for fear of an evil spirit, two girls crossing one day encountered the monster. Cutting off the beast's tail with an oar, the severed limb transformed into a solid piece of copper and became a talisman for good luck in fishing and hunting for their tribe.